Hello, Americans Abroadcast listeners. Today we're going to be talking with Allison Snowden. Allison is a Canadian expat with over 10 years of experience in higher education administration. She's committed to enhancing the quality, impact, and reputation of Webster University. She serves as the head of the rector's office, collaborating with the rector, the faculty, and the staff and external partners to create smooth and efficient operations for the university, advancing their strategic goals and vision. I want to welcome Allison to Americans Abroadcast today. How are you doing, Allison?
Fine, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're really glad to have you. And Ashley and I also wanted to talk a little bit about our graduate school experiences because we've all had them. And then we'll ask you a few questions. Are you okay with that?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Well, Ashley, you're not in grad school right now, but you've been to grad school, am I correct, in both France and in Vienna?
No, so I did my undergrad
Oh,
in
I'm
the
sorry.
States, both French and German, but that's why it only then made sense to do a master's here in Europe. But I did the entire program here at the University of Vienna. So just a kind of quick overview. First of all, I absolutely wanted to get a master's, but there's no way I could have afforded it in the States. And even when I had began in 2009, so it was 15 years ago, the costs have increased, but for the cost of a master's degree now for 4 semesters for a non-EU student, it comes out to roughly $3,000 for 4 semesters. In addition to that, you pay about €60 a month for health insurance, which is the same health insurance that I have via the public system. So even if you are a non-EU member, you are still entitled to that quote unquote universal health care here, which I think is absolutely amazing. And so more people need to know about this. The thing that I think is great about the University of Vienna now, because it's really changed a lot, in the past 10 to 15 years. So they now have graduate programs that are all in English. And so obviously, if you do speak German, you have wider possibilities. But if you don't, that should not be a deterrent, because there are programs, especially at the business school, that you can sign up for and enroll for that
Yeah.
are 100% in English. So my program was half in German, half in English, because it was an international program. So I really appreciated that too. So even though like I had some lectures in German, I was still permitted to write my papers in English. And the professors here were very understanding about that. And they didn't see it as something negative. They appreciated it. And so that's a really big bonus for Americans thinking about coming to grad school in Vienna. I mean, I do have to mention the fact that I don't find it as well organized and structured or even professional as an American university. And so you do have to navigate through the system, which was a bit frustrating for me at times, but it's possible. So
Yeah, I had a similar experience. Navigating the university bureaucracy at TU Wien was difficult. That's the Technical University of Vienna, a very old university. And the graduate program was also in German. But because I went from a business bachelor's degree to a computer science graduate degree, I needed a couple of things. I needed my original university in the US to accept me into their graduate school program for computer science, which they did. And then I had to do undergraduate courses at the Technical University of Vienna, which were not in English, which should have been okay. I did find it very difficult to do calculus in German, however. So even though I was getting a graduate degree in English, the sort of backfill courses were still undergraduate courses in German. And they were structured very differently than computer science courses would have been for undergrads in the US. So there was some culture shock for me at TU Wien. One other thing that I should bring up, graduate school for me was really a springboard into my professional career in Austria. So it opened the door for working here inside the EU, specifically here in Vienna. What about you, Ashley?
Yeah, that's good that Matt mentions that, because Austria also then provides this, they have like a skilled migration system where while you're a grad student, you're permitted to work 20 hours a week. So if you're doing a bachelor's, you're permitted to work 10 hours a week. As a grad student, it's 20 hours a week. And then after you receive your master's degree, you have 6 months to then find a job that's related to what you studied, and you have to earn above a certain threshold, but there is a way. And so this was also how I then eventually ended up living and working in Europe long term. So I didn't have to find someone to marry me, which actually is a way if you're lucky enough to find love, and a lot of people do that. But that does not have to be someone's plan. I just think it's really amazing, because this is something that Austria offers that the United States doesn't, and this is it, as much as they do in Austria. So in the additional information that we send out, we're going to send some links to the red, white, red card, the Rot-Weiß-Rot-Karte, which will explain in more detail kind of how you can go on after your studies to then get a work permit. But I was just so thankful to be in Austria, have studied here, found a job, found a way to stay. And if you are a skilled migrant, they want you to stay. They want you in the country. They provide you with healthcare. And so while it was difficult navigating at times, it is possible. So that is it from my side. Matt, did you have anything you wanted to add about your personal experiences before we hand the mic to Allison?
No, I just wanted to know if Allison could share what she feels are some of the key advantages for folks in the U.S. or Canada who might want to come study in Europe relative to studying in the United States.
Well, definitely, as Ashley mentioned, lower tuition costs is a major pull, but it's definitely not the only one. I think the cultural exposure and travel opportunities is just a really amazing life experience for people to come over here. Europe, everything is so densely packed together. We know, at our universities, the students are always taking weekend trips. They use the breaks. They go to neighboring countries. It is, in just 3 hours, you can be in multiple different countries from Austria. And this is really an unparalleled opportunity to have kind of cultural experience with multiple different cultures. Language immersion is another great opportunity. You really get to be in a country. It really helps you learn the language. As you both know, that it's standard here for students graduating high school to already speak 3 languages. And studying in Europe really helps Americans and Canadians take, kind of catch up there and learn more languages. Another advantage is that European universities tend to be really internationally recognized. So, this is a degree you're not going to have problems moving back to the States. Your credentials are going to be recognized. You'll be able to move around the world, especially because more and more the standards of European education are standardized by the Bologna process across Europe, which sets a very high standard for all European universities. So you really can be confident of the quality you'll get. And quality of life. I mean, many European countries have way higher quality of life, as rated on multiple different indexes, and Vienna is constantly topping the scales at #1. So
And you seem to always hear about the stress level of grad students in the U.S. Specifically, they're piling on debt and working and going to grad school, and navigating all of the stresses of that while trying to perform at a high level as a grad student. And so it seems like if you're in Vienna, you're not piling on debt. You have easy access to both healthcare and transportation to do your daily life errands, and to maintain a high standard of living while you're doing your studies. And it seems like you might be able to put a little bit more effort into your studies itself, without all of the additional burdens that you might find in the U.S. while being a grad student.
that's right. I also want to mention some things that I think are disadvantages compared to the American system
Okay.
that Ashley touched on as well. That, I mean, since these are public universities and publicly funded, they do not have the same level of customer focus. I mean, you have to recognize that it is a huge financial burden on the state, a lot of these universities, and they kind of pursue a system that they expect a certain higher level of attrition, you know, as opposed to retention being a, you know, they accept that, you know, there's, you know, every year a good 20% of students that just kind of manage to not continue on in their studies. And a lot of it also has to do with that it's very complicated to navigate. You know, getting into the right classes is not so easy. And you know, it just has to do with you're not viewed as a customer in this system. And so you have to be prepared to navigate that at the public universities. Also, and Matt, you mentioned this, there's a focus, especially in, you know, Germany, Austria, on more specialized education versus the liberal arts approach. So, you know, the system where you have a major and a minor, in the US, you tend not to have that in Europe. And also, almost usually have the experience that your master's degree is in the same subject as
Yeah.
your bachelor's, right? And it's very difficult to kind of branch that
Yeah.
way. And as
Yeah.
you
It
saw, you
was.
had to go back and take a whole bunch of different courses. And so this is because they drive you into a very specialized area. In my view, this is, I mean, in some cases quite good, but also, you know, you lose a little bit of that kind of liberal arts general education that I think is important for building, you know, lifelong learners. And so that's a different philosophy in the system.
But I think that that's a really important point to mention, because at the same time, when you are living in another country, like I studied foreign languages and cultures, and so my main goal was to submerge myself in the language, understand the culture, understand the people, and that is how I spent my time here. So I didn't study natural sciences, and I didn't really have this specialization, and there's not a huge like job market for anthropology, but at the same time, just being able to speak the language and understand the people around me gave me a huge advantage when I then entered the workforce and just began to just live here and navigate the system in general, because I just had a certain understanding and respect for, you know, the society that I was living in. And so that is invaluable and will continue to, you know, as something like, because Allison said, you know, it's this life learning process, and has opened up a lot of doors. However, I do not want to recommend the anthropology program at the University of Vienna.
Okay. Allison, can you tell us a little bit about the comparative costs? Maybe a broader sense of what opportunities for scholarship or financial aid are available for students coming in from the U.S. and what are the real costs for going to grad school here?
Yes, I can. So I mean, I think when we look at the average cost of a graduate degree at a private university in the US, I believe it ranges anywhere from 20,000 to 70,000 a year. So
Easily,
I mean,
yeah.
easily. So it's pretty significant if you're looking at medical university or a legal university, then it can be even more in certain cases. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe if you go to an in-state public university in the US, I mean, the cost is still around 10,000 to 25,000 per year.
Yeah, and it's it can be a 2-year, 3-year degree. It depends on
Right.
how quickly you can do it.
And then, so in Austria, you have kind of a flat fee that you pay. The average cost for studying at a public university in Austria is around 800 per semester, so significantly cheaper. And the cost of living would be about 1,200 per month in Vienna is what you could make do with here for sure,
That's great.
including accommodation, food, transportation, and other expenses. I
And
just want to mention, sorry.
okay, can I ask, how does that compare to what your cost of living might have been in Canada?
I mean, in Canada, currently it's less than what it would be in Canada at the moment, given very high accommodation costs at the moment, but it also depends where you live. So if you're in
And-
one of the bigger cities, I'm from Calgary, it would have been more there, but if you're from the countryside, the cost of living is less.
Sure, sure. But Vancouver, Calgary, Montreal, and Toronto, they would all expect to be paying significantly more than here in Vienna.
I do want to mention, though, that there's another type of university, not only in Austria, but throughout Europe, so private universities. So these are the non-publicly funded universities, and there's a variance in cost. Webster University is a private university in Austria. We are accredited university in Austria and the US. And so we are essentially offering American-style education in Austria. And the cost for a graduate degree here with us, this is closer to American costs than European costs, but it's still less, is about $30,000 for an entire degree.
Okay. And a graduate degree typically at Webster would be 2 years?
2 years, that's correct.
And is it a full range of degree programs, or is it targeted at specific areas of study?
Yeah, so we're a small university. We're part of a larger network, but at our campus here in Vienna, we offer degrees in international relation, MBAs, marketing, finance, and we're branching also into computer science and in media communications, so in strategic communications. That's our focus, and psychology, counseling psychology.
And does that mean that someone studying at Webster might expect to not only study at Webster in Vienna, but part of their degree program may include periods of time studying in other areas in the other regions within the EU?
Could be within the EU or outside the EU. So
Okay.
Webster is part of a network. It's called the Webster International Schools Network, the WINS network,
Okay.
which includes 14 international locations. We have locations in Geneva, in Leiden in the Netherlands, in China, for example, also partner in Florence. Uzbekistan is another Webster campus.
Wow.
And so there's a huge amount of study abroad opportunity, and it's very easy to go through. There's also a scholarship available if you want to study abroad that covers the cost of your transportation, like your flights.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
But of course, we're also part of the Erasmus network, which is a gigantic study abroad network linking European countries
Now
together.
that's something I think is really wonderful about the EU in general. Can you tell our listeners a bit about what the Erasmus program is?
Yeah, so the Erasmus program is a program that is funded by the European Commission, and it aims at educational exchange. So it supports students going from one university to another university. I participated myself. I studied at the University of Reykjavik in Iceland as a student, but
Wow.
they do more than just student exchanges. They also support traineeships, so you can have internships in other countries. They support faculty exchanges, so we frequently have an exchange of faculty coming from different universities, and also staff exchanges. As a staff at a university, I can go work at another university within the Erasmus network. The whole idea of it is to bring about greater European integration and idea exchange.
Can I ask, what is your general assessment of the success of the Erasmus program?
Oh, it's wildly successful. I mean, this is a huge program. I can't tell you off the top of my head what percentage of European students are participating in it, but it's very high. It's a great opportunity.
What do you think would happen if a Canadian, American, and Mexican presidential candidate simultaneously, they all three campaigned on the concept of bringing the Erasmus program to North America? Do you think that that would help them with their campaign? Do you think it would be a popular idea among the citizens of North America?
Absolutely. And actually, individual universities are already, kind of participating within this exchange by reaching out with individual agreements with Erasmus countries. I was at a Canadian university when I went to Reykjavik. But I think that, they should campaign on this idea and bring it and expand it, beyond North America.
Yeah, I agree. I think it would be great fun for American students to be able to begin their university studies in the US, but use it as a springboard to visit all of the wonderful places in Canada or all the incredibly interesting places in Mexico. And it would be great fun for Mexican students to see what snow is, for example, in Calgary or Vancouver.
Absolutely.
Not just the snow. I hear the bagels in Toronto are the best in the world, but I heard that from someone from Toronto.
Yeah, they're pretty good. Although I found a place in Vienna that has great bagels too. So
Okay,
and
definitely
they
tell us
actually
where.
originate from Vienna.
Well, spill the beans on that. Where do you get your bagels?
Budapest bagels in the second district.
Budapest bagels. I've seen them on Foodora.
He was part of the Jewish diaspora that brought them to Montreal.
Yeah, that's for sure. I know that there is a bagel place across from Votivkirche called Sobieski 1847 or something like that, or 18 something had to do with the General Sobieski's success fighting the Turks. But anyway, their bagels come from the second district, I believe from a Jewish bakery in the second district. They don't actually make their bagels.
Okay.
But they are good.
I wonder if they come from Budapest bagels. They have very good bagels.
I don't know. I'll have to find out.
But I wanted to also touch on your question about financial support.
Yeah.
You can use US financial aid for studying in Europe. A number of students do this.
Okay.
Coming from Canada, I also use Canadian financial aid for studying in Europe. So it's a little bit different, so I can't compare it, but also, so Veteran Affairs educational benefits also apply. We have a number of veterans studying at our university. There's a number of scholarships available for Americans, particularly in Europe. There's a Fulbright program, which is probably the largest scholarship program that helps Americans study abroad.
Okay.
There's also the Marshall scholarships. This helps Americans studying in the UK. So not here in Austria, but it's targeted there. There's the DAAD scholarships, DAAD, and this is for Americans who want to study in Germany. And there's also the Boren Awards, which international scholarships is for students who want to study in areas considered of strategic interest for the US.
But these are not, the Boren Awards are not for assassins who want to study in Europe.
No, not as far. I hope not.
Okay. All right.
The CIA scholarship, but yeah.
No, although I'm sure they have something. Okay.
Another thing I want to mention, while I was doing my undergrad degree, I was also doing summer programs in Europe. And my university did have a few scholarships, but I applied for some, got some, didn't get others. But then I just directly applied for a scholarship that basically didn't exist through our World Languages and Cultures department. And they provided me with the scholarship. They just thought, this person is so motivated. There isn't even a particular scholarship that she's applying for, but due to the fact that it was so rare that a student wanted to go to Europe, they decided to financially support me anyway. And so even if there isn't perhaps at your university, if you're perhaps doing your bachelor's and you're thinking about doing maybe just a semester or maybe just a month or two in a summer program in Europe, you can still go to your university and see if there's other opportunities out there, create your own opportunity. So also kind of think out of the box and you may be rewarded for it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. All universities have their own scholarships as well. These are just kind of the bigger programs that I mentioned, but there's tons of scholarships out there. Even Webster, we partner with companies like Borealis that provides financial needs scholarships that are available. Also, the city of Vienna provides scholarships that we award every year. And I think they're available at most universities as well. I just wanted to add one note though, is that now in Austria, there's more local student financing opportunities available. This is kind of new since, the kind of a lot of the tradition was you're going to these public universities, they're not very expensive. It's expected that students' parents support them a little bit, at least at the undergraduate level, and then at the graduate level that you're kind of working. And there hasn't been a fully fledged kind of, financial, so banking loans for students, but this has now been developed and it's available. And at better terms than is available in the US. There's also certain schemes available for promising students where you commit to paying a percentage of your income. So this is kind of novel. So if you graduate from university and don't get a high-paying job, there's very little risk for you at the end of it. So these kind of schemes exist. They're available now.
Would that also be eligible then for Americans to apply for a bank at a loan at a European bank?
Yes, it's different from bank to bank, but yes, you have to have an account set up here. You would have to be here in order to get it. You couldn't get it before you came.
Okay. You'd have to already have you'd be registered as living here already in order to
Yeah,
apply with an Austrian bank account already set up, I'm assuming.
exactly. If
Okay.
you're already here, that's available, but otherwise, I mean, before you go, you should apply for US financial aid.
And how does the transition to studying in Europe impact someone's health insurance? Do they typically need to switch to an EU health insurance system, or
Yes,
does this?
you
Okay,
must. Yeah,
yeah,
it's required in Austria. You must take local health insurance in order to be able to be granted a visa, a permit here. It's about 65 euros a month for the public insurance.
yeah,
Austria has a two-tier system where they have a public system, which is quite good. And then there's supplemental insurance, which allows you to access private hospitals and private doctors. And for students, it actually would not be that much more expensive. You can get it, for example, through Feel Safe, which partners with the provider Unica, for about 80 euros a month for a private insurance for students. It's low for students because they're relatively young. Of course, it
that's
might
very
depend
low. What is your
on.
sense from the students that you know of at Webster? What do you think the majority of them go with the private insurance?
I actually don't know that. I can't. I think it's about. I think most go with the public insurance.
Yeah,
But there is a good chunk, probably about 30%, I would say, that go also
yeah.
with the private insurance.
I could see a lot of young people just saying, "Well, I'd rather just save the $15 a month. I'm perfectly fine. I don't have any medical
Yeah.
issues." Yeah,
If you
So
have
the 80,
concerns, it gives you, it's just shorter waiting times. In general, it's the same doctors. They're just, have a private practice. You get less waiting times and access to the private hospitals.
yeah.
but the 80 is in total. It's not in addition to the 60, 65 euro to the.
Can you speak to the diversity of? To be honest, I have a friend, African American, in back in Texas, and one of the questions he has asked me is, Matt, as a black man walking down the street in Vienna, are people gonna look at me differently than walking down the street in Austin, Texas? Are there any black people there? What can you say about the diversity and inclusivity at your university and just in general for students studying abroad,
In general, I will Austrian stare, that's for sure.
regardless of what color you are?
I think probably if you look more different than the normal, they will stare more,
Yeah,
honestly, I'm
yeah,
sure. So
yeah.
I don't think it's regardless of the color you are. But however, I think at universities, there's a lot of push towards diversity and inclusion, and people feel in general pretty welcome. At our university, we have about 85% of our students are international, so coming from different countries in Austria, so it's very international. They come from over 40 different countries. 60% of our faculty and staff are international. So it's a very, very international environment. And also in Austria and Vienna in particular, the universities also are very international. They draw from a bunch of neighboring countries. And Vienna itself, I believe 30 to 40% of people who live in Vienna were not born in
Yeah,
Austria.
they don't have Austrian citizenship.
They
Yeah,
don't have Austrian citizenship. So it is a very international environment in Vienna, and you don't feel like you're town where no one gets the international outlook. It is a very cosmopolitan country, especially since you have the UN here and a bunch of different international organization. The expat community here is thriving, and it's very, very easy to find a community.
yeah, I agree with that. That's been my experience. What about the cooperation between companies and universities? Would there be opportunities for someone studying abroad to collaborate on research with companies that have R&D departments when they're studying here?
It's harder for me to speak about the general opportunities at most of the universities, but I do believe that more and more this is happening.
Hmm.
I think also, especially in European universities, even at a bachelor level, you're required to write a thesis for your bachelor's degree universally. And of course, at the master's level, a thesis is required. And this thesis gives a good opportunity to cooperate with companies. Companies are generally open to having students participate with them. And especially in certain fields, there's a lot of set collaboration. So for example, where there's kind of an agreement that X amount of students can participate in a particular research study.
Okay.
And this is something that we are planning on bringing in as part of our computer science program, which we hope to start in fall 25. I'm kind of a mandatory practicum. And a lot of different fields have a required practicum. So for example, in psychology and in a lot of these fields,
Right.
you have to collect so many hours in the field in order to
Yeah.
graduate. So you get a lot of experience in that way. But it depends on the field and where you're studying. Of course, universities mostly have a career center. Webster University also has a career center. And there's a lot of cooperation with companies in terms of having recruitment events on campus or bringing students off campus. We have regular career lunches with Ernst & Young or Bloomberg, where we bring students onto the campuses, or a
Okay.
lot of other big companies. And there you have a chance also to participate, not only just meet them, but participate in interviews and recruitment processes.
Okay. Probably McKinsey as well does a lot of recruiting.
McKinsey.
Yeah.
Yes, there's also, a lot of student consulting. When you're studying business, there's a lot of opportunities for joining student consulting groups, right? So basically a student club that offers consulting services
Oh,
to
wow.
small companies, and they partner.
As a grad student, is the workload such that you probably don't have time for extracurricular activities, or is there a good balance there where the students are also able to go out and do extracurricular things as well? And what kinds of things do international students tend to do with their free time once they're studying here?
I think you definitely have time to participate in something else, and it depends on your program. Most grad programs in Austria happen during the day, so it's difficult to work at the same time, or you kind of work in part-time jobs. At Webster, we offer all our grad classes in the evening to accommodate people who are having full-time jobs. And so, for example, when I studied at Webster University before I worked there, and I used that opportunity to work at the International Atomic Energy Agency during the day, and then I had classes in the evening,
Ah, that
which was
sounds
great.
cool. What
Yeah.
was that experience like?
It was fantastic. It was a chance to work in the UN, very international. I even got to participate in a mission to Serbia, kind of a fact-finding mission where I was part of the program Action for Cancer Therapy, which is a program that helps developing countries, kind of look at and manage their radiotherapy machines, which uses nuclear technology, which is kind of
Hmm.
an area that many people don't know that the IAEA participates in. But so I got to go and visit some hospitals in Serbia in a mission, and it was really a fantastic opportunity. I really liked it. And there I worked together with the director of human health at the agency. He served as a reader for my thesis. So that was kind of a collaboration, which was great.
Well, I think that's a big advantage that Webster Vienna offers for students is the UN is right there. And the UN is always looking for people for different contracts, different projects. Uh,
Yes. I mean, I think the big advantage that Webster offers is it focuses on mentorship, that it's very small class sizes. So you really have a lot of personal interaction with your faculty. And this whole internship was possible because I was introduced to the head of human health at the IEA by my faculty member. And so really these type of connections and this type of individual attention and support is what would set Webster out from the public universities.
well, that's something to think about for students that are interested in that kind of work or working or studying international relations or want to have a more international career path where they get
Yes,
to,
absolutely.
yeah.
Come and get an internship at the UN. It's a great experience. However, I think grad students, that there's in other universities, there's lots of activities that students can get involved in. There's loads of clubs, debate organizations. I mean, there's a very, very big student life available. I mean, one thing that you have to be aware of is that so you have to get involved in these clubs, and you have to go to there's kind of sometimes you have to look for them. Sometimes the universities have a club rush, but it's harder to fall into the university life than it is in the US because they don't have this big campus set up. I
Yeah.
mean, with kind of maybe the exception of the business university here, that you have to sometimes the universities are spread out over multiple buildings in an area of the city, And so you
Yeah.
have to really make sure that you get involved and take the initiative, because you're not just going to, end up hanging out on campus and just meet people that way. So that's important.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot more opportunities for, like, because it's an American university, it's closer to the American system. So I think the transition for like an American, if you can afford to go to Webster, I would definitely recommend it, because studying at a public university in Austria is just a completely totally different experience. Like, I was not involved in any extracurricular activities. I did not feel like I was involved in the student life. I was working part-time, and so I had my own group of friends and my own life really apart university. It felt more like a commuter campus,
Yeah.
to be
And
honest.
Yeah, and so that brings me to my point where you have to, when you're part of one of these big universities, you have to push yourself to get involved. And I encourage you to do that, right? If you're coming and studying at the public universities, make sure you find the clubs. They're there. They're harder to see, but they are there.
And I should probably stress there are no sororities to speak of that I'm aware of.
There are
Oh, there
sororities
are.
and
Okay.
fraternities, yes, but they're
Okay.
different. They're so sometimes they're organized around subject matter in terms of like what you're studying, like international relations, kind of thing. And so they're more like an honor society. They take on also sometimes Greek letters, but it's nothing similar to the US fraternity or sorority system. It's kind of more like a club for people interested in business or international relations.
Doesn't the term fraternity in Austria carry different connotations than fraternity in the US?
Yeah, so I think they like what I'm talking about, they would call a society here.
Oh, okay. So,
But yeah, the fraternity, the Burschenschaft, which is
mhm,
probably the closest,
yeah.
has different connotations. Absolutely.
So don't confuse the two.
Don't confuse the two, yeah.
Let's assume you've just finished your graduate program. You now have a graduate degree here in the EU. What comes next?
A big percentage of our students remain in Vienna following their degree. They kind of fall in love with it. A lot go back as well. The undergraduate students usually continue on and do a graduate degree. But in Vienna, you do have the opportunity to apply for the Rot-Weiß-Rot card, which Ashley talked a little bit about before,
Yeah.
which is basically a permit, which enables you to stay 6 months following the completion of your degree in order to find a job.
Okay.
Now, something to be aware with the red, white, red card, as it's called, is then once you do find a job, you're required to stay with that employer for a certain period before you're able to switch employers.
So you're locked in.
You're locked in, yeah. And then you can apply for a different card, which is called the red, white, red plus card, which enables you to basically freely move around employers.
Yeah. Okay.
And there is a little challenge with it, because the job that you need to get has a minimum salary. So you need to be sure that you find a job that pays the salary.
Which should not be hard if you're at a graduate. If you have a graduate degree, that shouldn't be too difficult. I would think that most jobs would.
It should not be too difficult. It does depend a little bit on the state of the economy at the moment when you're looking.
Okay. But the state of the economy right now seems pretty good, and the need for
That's correct.
workers, yeah, the need for workers is very high.
Yes.
I think right now is a really good time to be working, looking for a job in Austria. I mean, the landscape is really different. Like, it's completely changed within the past 10 to 15 years with startups and so many international companies coming here. It's really a good time to be looking for a job here. So, and I think it's so awesome that Webster, offers this master's program, 30,000. You think actually for an Austrian, they would think that that's really expensive, but for an American, it kind of sounds normal, maybe even cheap. But you get so many benefits then, in addition to just a university degree, but being abroad and with all of these intercultural experiences that you have.
Because your cost of living will be low for every month that you're in that graduate program. Your health insurance costs will be low for every month that you're in that graduate program. So those are expenses that you don't have that you would be having if you were studying at, for example, Boston University or any major city in the US. Well, I think we've covered everything in the list of questions that we wanted to ask. And
Allison,
you've
thank
been
you so much.
super informative. Yeah, we really appreciate it.
Are you available to be able to give your email address, or can people find you on LinkedIn, maybe ask you questions?
Yeah, absolutely. People can find me on LinkedIn. Also, I can give you my email address. It's Allison, ALLISON SNOWDEN at webster.ac.at.
Hey,
Thank
Allison,
you,
thanks a lot.
Allison.
And I look forward to talking with you more in the future.
Absolutely. All
Okay,
right,
thanks.
thanks for having me.
And we're going to have a graduate school checklist included on our newsletter. Just visit americansabroadcast.com and click on the subscribe button. And if you're listening on YouTube, be sure and click like and subscribe to support our channel.